I'm here with Elizabeth and Tiffany, and we're going to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the SMB tech landscape. And I guess maybe first, Tiffany and I worked together at GGV, but Elizabeth and I met a year ago, and we were at a sort of a work-related offsite, if you will, and just hit it off. Both of us were super focused on the SMB tech space, which is a space that we at GGV Capital have been passionate about for many years. And so really fun to work together over the last year, Elizabeth, and pull all this together today and share it with the community. And can't wait to see all the things we have to come. But we're gonna share some great stuff with everybody. Just quickly, maybe Elizabeth, you could do an intro, and Tiffany could do an intro, and then Tiffany, I'll hand it off to you.
Great, thanks, Jeff. And yes, we have a complete shared romance and passion for small business owners. And I love GGV's model that great businesses come from everywhere. So I'm Elizabeth Gore. I'm one of the founders at Hello Alice. We are a machine learning platform that helps small business owners launch and grow. We have a very proud focus on what we call the new majority of business owners: women, people of color, our U.S. veterans, the LGBTQ+ community, owners with disabilities. And I'm proud to say today we hit our 260,000th customer. So we're really proud that 260,000 owners are using Hello Alice every week, both in the highs and the lows. And so I'm real proud to be with y'all. And it's an honor to share both the data, but the stories behind that data.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Super excited to have you. And as Jeff mentioned, I'm also an investor at GGV. Spend a lot of time focused on SMB tech. It's a passion area of mine. My family members are all small business owners. So spend a lot of time in the space and meeting with founders who are founders and their teams, who are really trying to think about how to serve SMBs from here. And, it's been an incredible year for SMB tech. I think, Allison mentioned it earlier in our FinTech panel, but really no one has a choice of whether or not being online is not a choice anymore. It's something that businesses have to do. And so not just being online, but being digitally enabled throughout the organization. And so within SMB tech, we've seen a huge tailwind for a lot of businesses. Actually, we launched an Smb Tech Index that we've been tracking for about 2 years now at GGV. That includes public company tech space. What's kind of amazing is, the category has grown in 2015, kind of made up about $15 billion of market cap, and that's now over $500 billion of market cap, and 22, including new entrant BigCommerce that just went public a couple months ago. So I think to the power of SMB tech globally, and even just in terms of kind of performance that we've seen this year, on average, those companies are up, that cohort of companies is up 81%. So they've had an incredible year. And I think Jeff will talk a little bit more now just about kind of what we're seeing, and Jeff and Elizabeth, what we're seeing in terms of kind of data.
Yeah, I want to turn it over to Elizabeth, but maybe I can just add one comment to your points here, Tiffany, which is, and Jackie from Square made this point earlier. She says, never been a better time to start a company. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, it sounds crazy. We're in month 7 of a global pandemic. And yet, if you look at the tools to start a company, there's never been more available to a small business owner in terms of technology. Hopefully we can solve for the capital and financing part of the equation. As Elizabeth mentioned, we're seeing more and more minority and female entrepreneurs start small businesses, which is an amazing trend. And then, new business applications in the US this year are up 40% year over year. So now a lot of that is because of necessity, folks who lost their job in Q1 or Q2 under the COVID pandemic. But a lot of it is folks who are taking a journey through life and making a change in their career and will never look back. And so I couldn't be, and I think Elizabeth will share some data with you all that highlights this. We couldn't be more optimistic as we head into 2021 about the outlook for small business. Unfortunately, this year has been brutal for a lot of people, but I'm just super bullish about the tailwind for small businesses we head into next year. And I think you'll see that play out in some of the data that Elizabeth's going to share with us.
Sure, my pleasure. And Jeff, I don't know if it's 7 months or 7 years. It just depends on the way
right?
how it feels. But GGV and Hello Alice, we really wanted a dedicated focus on new data coming out. And so we went out to a very diverse set of owners, all 50 states. We polled, surveyed, or went through application with 97,000 of them. And if you'll jump to the next slide, we all could say, duh, that 64% of owners stated their business performed worse. And we can sigh, roll our eyes, and panic. However, something that I want to just transition over to is that looking forward, there's a pretty darn positive outlook. And I know that entrepreneurs are traditionally very optimistic, but I will say we've all been through the trenches this year. And the reason I see this optimism is because of an investment that was made. So Tiffany, if you jump to the next one, something that I think we're all really interested in is that even though 60% of small businesses actually laid off employees, they froze their rent, they paused their business, most of them actually spent more on software. So this is super interesting because to me, they were preparing for the future. And this tells a really important story to all of you who provide SMBs with software, that we are going through a distinct digital transformation in the SMB world. Now, whether it's required or because we had to, or whether I was an auto mechanic, I always had paper receipts, but I'm finally going cashless. We have really seen this shift. The other point of optimism I'll just talk about is 93% are planning on hiring. Some of those folks were rehiring staff that they either furloughed or laid off, but the majority of those actually were folks who plan on growing next year. So what does this mean for all of you? For those of you in the SMB software space, what I want to challenge you is to think creatively of how to get your software into the hands of owners. So we still need to very much push relief for small business owners. And many of you think of it as maybe so they don't close the doors, but it's also there so they can invest in your services. So rent relief, grants, small business loans are all critical so they can invest in your services. A quick example is all of us want our favorite restaurants to make it. DoorDash just did a sponsorship grants program so that many of those small businesses could actually use DoorDash systems during the winter months. So I thought it was a really smart way to encourage small business to uptick in their software. And then finally, I'll just close with, we have to be very mindful about the disparities between women and people of color in these numbers. There is still a huge sense of optimism amongst these groups, but they are starting with less cash or less loans. So Jeff's point of this is a great time for SMB software, but we still have to solve some of the cash problems is there. So I'm optimistic, Jeff. I'm excited. This really got me inspired about 2021. And the ingenuity coming out of these small business owners is incredible.
Hey, Elizabeth, one of the things that I was able to go on CNBC yesterday and talk about this, and one of the things they asked me was, what are people doing in terms of access to capital? Obviously, we had the PPP program, the CARES Act. I shared the stat that we have 50% fewer regional banks today than we did 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So our sort of community banking system, who used to lend money and provide capital to small businesses, has actually shrunk over the last few decades. Now that's being replaced to some extent by folks like Square with Square Capital and Shopify Capital. And I think a lot of the companies that Tiffany and I are involved in will launch capital elements to their business. But what are you seeing or hearing from the 97,000 small businesses and the 200,000 that work with you as to how are they accessing capital and getting money to finance their business?
The best one I've seen, and the majority of them are accessing grants or sponsorships from enterprise. So anyone from Verizon to MasterCard to Square have all put out funds, and many of them are run through Alice, where we're actually disseminating grants between $10,000 and $50,000 to these owners. So that, especially with those are the harder to reach, have been really good. The second thing I'll just say is we're really thinking about equitable access to credit. Credit continues to be a critical part of small businesses, and we need to figure out ways to where businesses aren't getting denied and they're not getting predatory credit rates. So I think equitable access to credit is a new topic that we all need to pay attention to, in addition to traditional loans and venture.
And are you I think one of the data points that we had in this study was that 52% of folks in the universe that we surveyed had actually applied for a PPP loan or a CARES Act loan, which was actually smaller than I would have anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it would have been a higher percentage. Do you attribute that to just their businesses were fine, they were healthy, they didn't need capital, or do you think it was more of a awareness and access issue?
So the latter. So yes, 50%, only 50% applied. And what we have shown in our studies that there is a lack of a traditional banking relationship. So if you look at US veterans, which there's a huge chunk on Hello Alice, the majority of them have just come back from being deployed. They don't have long-term residencies, credit scores, or banking relationships. So they were not able to pick up the phone, get to the front of the line, and apply. So that access piece is really critical. And when you look at African Americans, only got 2% of PPP, even those who applied, 1 in 10 Hispanic owners. So it's time that we really look at that these relief programs are critical, but we have to provide better access.
Yeah. And are who's going to do that?
All of you.
You know what I mean? I mean, we say we, but like, is Wells Fargo doing that? Is Bank of America doing that? Like, who is, are you seeing any of the major financial institutions work on that?
I'm happy that I have seen a significant commitment come out of commercial, not CSR, but commercial. There's a 2% program for net spend going into primarily minority owned business communities. So I'm glad to see those commitments. Where we need to see is making sure that money gets all the way to the ground. So I do think CDFIs are very important. I do think non-traditional funding models are very important. And then I'm excited to see the Squares of the world really thinking about how to do this in a new way and these new fintech companies coming forward. And when I say we, at Hello Alice, we're working with enterprise to say, work through partnerships, work through organizations like a Black Girl Ventures or Div Inc. or Black and Brown Founders, the National Hispanic Chamber, to ensure that we're partnering all the way to front line to ensure owners get the access they need.
Yeah. Well, all I can say is Godspeed. Well,
listen, small business owners have the ingenuity to make it through. You see amazing resilience come out of crisis. We've seen awesome pivots. I also see that there is this great empty hole because everyone has to pivot right now, but large corporations, it's very hard to pivot fast. It's very hard to move fast. So that leaves an opening for small businesses and entrepreneurs to jump in there and scale new ideas. And I don't want to go back to normal. I want to go to net new here. It's exciting.
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's going to be, we had this conversation yesterday, which is there are a whole bunch of things people are launching and creating right now that we're not even aware of. And we're going to look back in 3 to 6 months and say, of course that made sense. Right. Some local community program that an entrepreneur is going to gin up and replicate. I think, I've been doing this long enough to know that when times get tough, people innovate.
Absolutely. I wore my Captain Marvel coat today because after reading this data, I think that exactly that these owners are superheroes. They have complete optimism that they're going to make it, and they're going to make it with these new tools thanks to this SMB tech that is so readily available and at a lower price point now.